To make the water part of our bee fight actually difficult, we're going to make some changes to the way that our player handles water movement and water detection. Specifically, we're going to make it so that when you're in the water can push you around, but you can't move left and right. You have to jump out of the water to be able to move left and right. So how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to make a couple changes to our player script and a tiny modification to our water. And then eventually we're going to also update the sprites so that the water flows visually as well. We're going to start by detecting when our player is in the water and caching that as another bool field here. So we'll duplicate the is on snow and change this to is in water. And then let's scroll down to the part where we actually look for water right now. Currently in our check for ground, if I just search for water, there you go. See how on line 249, we check to see if we hit a water trigger and then continue on so that we can try to mark ourselves as grounded. Let's not do that anymore and add in a new little call down below so we don't have to have this get component call on every single collider when we're checking our ground. This is probably the worst part of our code for grounding right now. So we're going to delete that out and we're going to add in a new set of lines right below. In fact, let's delete out this extra debug line as well. And what we're going to use is the physics2d. So here let's say var water equals physics2d, if I can find the word physics2d or spell it right, dot overlap point. And that's going to give us back a point or any colliders at a specific point that match our layer mask. That's not this overload, but once we give it the correct overload, we'll see that happen. So we're going to give it our origin, where we're checking for ground, and then we're going to give it a layer mask. Let's call this water layer mask. Add a semicolon here, and then we're going to generate our water layer mask. Actually, I'm going to copy it, control left click on layer mask, go up here, duplicate and paste. I want those to be right next to each other. All right, let's scroll back down or hit the back button. There we go. There's our water. And if we get a water object, so if water is not equal to null, then we'll just say is in water is equal to true. Now, if we're in water, I want that to allow us to jump as well. So let's start looking for our grounding code. Let's go do a quick search for the checks where we see if we're grounded. So here you'll see, is it this one right? Nope. That's jumps remaining. Okay. So here we get our jumps remaining, and we do that with our grounded. I also want to just set our jumps remaining to true if we're in water or if we're grounded. So let's make this a statement where we say if is grounded or is in water. Whoops, that's not in water, in water. And then we're going to put that in the parentheses so that this will get evaluated with the or. If either one of them is true, it'll continue on and then evaluate to make sure that our rigid body's velocity is going down. So if we're in the water and we're headed downwards, we're going to set our jumps remaining up to 2. Now, I don't know why we're calling get component on our rigid body. Let's cache that or use the cached version of it, RB, to optimize our performance there. Now we're also going to need to look for the other places we set is grounded to false, for example. So right up here, we'll say is in water is equal to false. And let's just do a quick check to see if there's anywhere else that we need to address it. So we do Shift F12, and you see that we set an animator here to jump if we're not grounded. That I actually don't want to happen when I'm sitting in the water, so that's actually perfect. And the only other scenario is that, we set it back to false, and then we set it to true. So that should be good for allowing us to be grounded when we're in the water. But that's not the key thing that I want to do. What I really want to do is make it so that if we're in the water, we don't use our horizontal velocity at all, and we just use whatever the existing velocity was. So we're going to add a line here right at what is it going to be, 211, if is in water, so right at the end of our movement code. Then we're not going to do this. I'll duplicate the line though and add an else statement. Instead of setting our velocity to the horizontal and the vertical, we're just going to set it to the _rb.velocity.x and the vertical. So we'll keep the velocity on the x exactly the same if we're in the water, but we can still jump out by using the vertical. Let's hit Control-K, Control-D to fix up that formatting, save, and go try it out. We're back in Unity now and need to set a layer mask for the water. I'll make sure to save and override. Let's do an apply overrides on it and save one more time just so we make sure that our prefab has that water layer set. And then we'll play and run over to the water. So you go get in the water, and I can still move left and right. Let's check if my in water state is true. So is in water is not true. If I check it, obviously it gets set to false. Now what's going on here, if we look at our scene view, and go find our character. You can see that these are the origin points where we're doing our overlap check. Let's take a look at the water there. So I select this water object here. You see that this has a box collider, not on the water layer. This is actually that bottom part, and it's not set to a trigger. Let's look at the top water. The top water, is actually also not set to the water layer. And it's other than that, it looks like it's good to go though. So let's make the changes real quick that we need. So we'll stop playing, and first thing we're gonna do is set our water to a water layer. Go to water right there. And then the second thing we're gonna do is go to our water bottom, and we're gonna change this to be a trigger. And I'll show you why. Let's do it in play mode first. Well, one of the reasons is so that our code hits and lands and looks right, but also so that when we float, see how we're kind of standing up a little bit. I hit is trigger, and now we're actually floating down into there. And let's go check out our player. Our player is now in the water. So I can't move left and right really. I can jump and move around, but moving left and right doesn't work. Now, how is this going to be interesting? You should be able to move a little bit, right? Well, what we're going to do instead is use the water, and we'll use that effector that we have, our buoyancy effector. Go find it and expand out the flow, and we can start giving it now a flow magnitude. So if I want it to push enemies toward, or push the player towards the enemy, I can give it a value that's positive, and it's going to push them over to the right. So let's stop playing and make both of those changes outside of play mode. So we'll go back to our water, choose that water bottom, and make sure auto tiling is on, is trigger is on, and everything, and make sure that our object is set to the water layer. I'm going to save my scene, and then let's open up the water script. Let's add a new method in our water to set the speed of its buoyancy. So we'll do a public void set speed. We'll take in a float named speed, and then we'll just get our, oops, I got an extra parentheses there. We'll get our buoyancy effector, get component buoyancy effector, B-O-U-Y, or B-U-O-Y, there we go. Buoyancy effector 2D, and we'll set the flow magnitude equal to our speed so that we can turn this on and off or set the direction externally. And we're going to do that from our being counter. So let's go back to that being counter. And inside of our being counter, we've got a reference to our water, and we set it and turn it kind of on and off here, moving it up and down. But let's also just set that speed depending on what our enable or disable state is. So we'll say underscore water dot set speed, and I want this to go off to the right somewhat fast, so we'll say enable flood, then it'll be a 5F, otherwise it'll be a 0. So it's going to set it to either 5 or 0 depending on whether or not we're enabling the flood. Let's do a quick save, do a build, and jump inside and try it out. All right, here we are, we're in the water. I can't really move around, I just kind of float. I can jump, get over to where I want it to be. I think I'm going to get over here and just blast him a whole bunch. Oh, he's invulnerable while he's shooting. Let's see if I can get a whole bunch of shots off on him real quick. Kill him for real without having to cheat. Look at that. There's the water. Okay, I can... It's pushing me. It's pushing me. Oh, crap, I died fast. Okay, well, that seems to be working. I'm going to test it one more time, though, just to make sure that the behavior is right. So it's kind of a quick test. We'll go to the B encounter now that I've got my hotkeys here, or my shortcuts. We'll do half health. Bam. Should be getting pushed to the right. I can jump out, and I can move left and right when I'm in the air. But when I'm in the water, I'm just getting forced over to the right. Nice and slowly. You could probably speed that up, crank it way up if we wanted to make it more difficult, but I'm good with that for now, and I'm going to go into plastic and commit our changes. So we'll go back to plastic and make sure we save the scene. Say that B water forces player. Yeah, B water moves player. Let's say player handles water properly, and B water flows to the right when flood starts. And we'll check our changes in.